Authorize funds for the federal aid highways, highway safety programs, and transit programs, and for other purposes. Senate amendment. Mr. DeFazio moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 3684.
The question is on the motion on which the yeas and nays were ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
And happy Sunday. It is Sunday, November 7th, 2021. We're here on a Sunday instead of Saturday. Had some business to attend to yesterday. But actually, it's good that we're here on Sunday because it gave us some time to process all that's going on in the world. As you saw in the lead in to the program, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. So I need somebody to talk to. So you know what that means? That means Val Atkins is here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed. Nice to be here, and I'm glad I'm on time because daylight saving time started.
Oh, well, yeah, I needed that extra hour, dude. I'm telling you. Thankfully, that kicked in. So I'm here too with bells on. Val, there's a bunch to talk about. The last clip there in the opening, you saw the House going through the procedural part of renaming the bill that came over from the Senate because they have to send it back over. There has to be a little bit of reconciliation between what the House passed and the Senate, a matter of business, but it did get passed. And some Republicans came along in the House, voted for it. It looks like there's broad enough support to get it through in the Senate again. And there will be an infrastructure plan. Talk to me real quick about what this means. There's still other work to do, right? This isn't the end of it, right?
Oh, no, it's not the end of it. As a matter of fact, as you said, that it's got to go back to the Senate to iron out the changes, and then they'll approve this, that, or the other, and may come back again to iron out what the Senate has said. But eventually, it's going to go through, and the $1 trillion package is going to help do all of the things that Biden and his administration said it would. I want to talk a second or two about the Republican response to this. And I want to be one of the first to say that we should look out or watch out for Republicans taking credit for this. They're going to say that they had over a dozen people in the Senate to go along with the bill when it was first passed. And without them, it would have never have passed the House because you had a progressive caucus and some other people that were not on board. So without them, Democrats didn't have the power to do what they claim they do well all the time, which is govern. They could not have done this without Republicans. I don't believe that. That is not the story. I'm just saying that watch out for that. You're going to hear that because that's the kind of offshoot stuff they like to participate in.
Well, I'm glad you bring up that point because one, we already know they're not above lying because they do that straight out. I mean, look, I don't pull any punches on here. I don't have to answer to anybody. This is our thing here. I can tell you that you're absolutely right. They're going to try to take credit for it because they try to take credit for all the stimulus that's already been passed by the Democrats. So Val, they're going to try to take some credit for it, even though they held everything up. Last week we had Herb Joyner on, and we were lamenting the future of the progressives within the Democratic Party. There still was some backbiting going on. The progressives are still not happy with the ultimate. I don't think it's resolved yet, but they're certainly not happy. Right. So what does this mean in terms of people like AOC, who the right like to pick on and pretend like that's the whole Democratic Party? Do progressives get anything out of this first passage of this first block? And then there's still more to come, right? There is other legislation that's pending, right?
Yes, there's other legislation that's pending. A lot of people call it the human infrastructure piece. And you got to go back to the very beginning of this thing over in the Senate, when there was talk of a infrastructure bill and a human infrastructure bill. And what Nancy Pelosi said in response to the Republicans saying, okay, let's pass this one first, the infrastructure bill, and then we'll support and we'll get to the human infrastructure bill later. And Nancy's response was, okay, but I'm telling you right now, both of them will go over together or neither one will go over. And progressives took that to heart to say that's the rule we're going to play by. They'll both go over together or neither one will go over. And once the bill got over there and we saw that we didn't have the votes, then seemingly things changed. Both of them are not going to go over together. And progressives were asked to cave. And most of them did. You only had about 6, I believe, that failed to vote in the affirmative for this. But most of them caved, and you're talking about 94 of them, or 93. You have 100 people in the caucus plus one non-voting person. So you had 94 or so people that went along, but you had 6 that did not. And that was a big cave-in. I don't think AOC and Jayapal and all of the rest of the caucus, I don't think that they're going to make this a habit. They're not going to continue to cave in and fold when the leadership or anybody else makes a deal with those people who don't abide by deals sometimes, and expect the progressives or Democrats to cave in to the new rules. You can't keep doing that. I think at some point, the progressive caucus is going to say, hey, I'm not going to keep doing this, making rules and making deals, and you get what you want out of it and slam the door and say, no, we change our mind. We're not going to uphold our end. And I think they'll just quit, and the Democratic Party is going to have a hard time making things happen without them.
Yeah, the good points, Val. I want to remind you folks that you're listening to and watching The Deal. I'm Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're starting off with the infrastructure bill that just passed the other night. Now it's back onto the Senate. It'll get resolved there. Then I'm pretty sure there'll be a Rose Garden ceremony, Val, where the president, passes out pens and he signs his thing. And then money will start flowing to the states to start doing some of this work. That means more people can go to work making higher wages doing some of this work to repair roads and bridges and put in broadband internet everywhere, which leads me to the next issue that's sort of related to this is the economy as a whole. We've been hearing this BS from the right saying that the country's going to hell in a handbasket because there's some inflationary pressures, but we have inflationary pressures, Val, because the idiots that ran the asylum the last time, Donald Trump, he was only concerned about winning. He wasn't concerned about running the country. So consequently, we had a pandemic that's wiped out nearly 1 million Americans, messed up the restaurant business and the hospitality business, ran gas prices down because there was no demand because everybody was at home. And as soon as people start driving again, the price goes up, and people don't understand that prices are based on supply and demand, particularly in the oil industry. I don't know if you remember, Val, about this time last year, the price per barrel for oil had hit its all-time low because nobody in the world was going anywhere. That gas and oil are international, based on international prices. So long way to what I want to talk about next, which is job numbers. Hold on just a second. Let's look at this clip and then we'll talk about the job numbers.
We also had back month revisions that made things look a little bit better as far as, maybe September and even August were a little better than originally reported. But then I like getting into some of the details, the diffusion indexes within the employment situation report. This is something in one of the supplements that they provide, Table B, for those people who want to look at it. At the bottom, it looks at the industries, the percent of industries that experienced an increase in employment. Now, that was only around 60 to 65% last month, but now for this month's report, it actually ballooned out to around 71%. So not only did we have very good job gains, it was broad-based. And
Well, Val, it looks like people are working. I keep hearing this bullshit about people not wanting to work and yada, yada, yada. And then you see the job numbers. And then the adjusted job numbers for the month before shows that even more people are back to work. Well, hell yeah, they're back to work because we got people vaccinated. We put measures in to stem the tide of the pandemic. A lot of people have died. Some people helped us out inadvertently by killing themselves, by taking themselves out of the picture. I hate to say that, but some people were stupid enough to take themselves out. So job numbers first. Let's talk about that. The numbers were better than what was projected. What's behind it? What does it mean? Do we even need to even think about it? Wasn't that going to happen anyway?
Yeah, as you said, it's all tied around COVID and virtual working, virtual meeting, virtual everything, and the gas that needed to travel all of these places. And the hospitality industry, particularly restaurants and those kinds of things, they made it very difficult for people to come back to work. So now some of them are coming back because they're vaccinated, and we're going to talk about that later, I understand. But now the most important cog in this whole wheel are kids. They seem to be getting vaccinated. Now people don't have to worry about daycare in order to go to work. They don't have to make the choice between job and childcare. So all of these things make it so that, yeah, job numbers should be going up. Unemployment should be going down 4.6, which is very, very low, as low as it's ever been in the last several years. So all of these things are good, but they are related to natural, if you can call anything natural when you're talking about the economy. They are related to economic natural events and issues, which are supply and demand, as you so well put, Ed. So I look forward for this trend to continue just a while. 500 and some thousand new jobs are great. They even went back and said the last two numbers that came out should have been a little higher than they actually were. So all of this looks good right now. And you're going to talk about Joe Biden in the Rose Garden giving out pens. He's going to talk about this as well.
Yeah, so that means that the Republicans are going to have to double down on the nonsense that they've been talking about in terms of critical race theory and all these other things. Because I'm telling you, Val, the stimulus money that was put out several times by the Democrat House and Senate, prompted by the President Biden, also the tax credit, child tax credit, people are getting that money every month. And maybe they don't realize it yet, but they would not have gotten it had it not been for Joe Biden. I was listening to Al Sharpton this morning, Val, and I was struck. There's a number of callers called in and says, well, Democrats deserve to have lost. Joe Biden hasn't done anything for black people. And I was like, well, what the hell do they call this, the additional money they're getting in their check for child tax credit? What does it mean to not be on the brink of complete disaster because he's been able to get vaccinations to people and in the vaccination mandates? And again, we'll talk about that later. But the job numbers are not bad. Yes, there is some inflationary pressure. Obviously, there's inflationary pressure when you go from absolutely nothing to everything all at once, which is almost like what this economy has swung, the most violent swing probably ever. You shut down the entire country, Val. I don't think there's been any other times except for maybe at the beginning of World War II when people were scared, right? And you hunkered down in your house and they rationed sugar and flour and all that other kind of stuff. We haven't had that kind of thing since World War II. I can't think of a time when the country would have gone through that. Anyway, long and short of it is there's some bullshit that you're going to hear about, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we want to talk about the election on this past Tuesday night. Virginia, Terry McAuliffe lost as governor of Virginia. We're going to talk about why. In New Jersey was a cliffhanger. What does all this portend for the Democrats nationally going into the midterms? And we'll talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Severe weather can strike anytime, anywhere, but there's a simple way to stay safe. Hey, Jim Cantore here. I stay safe in dangerous weather by planning ahead. You can stay safe too with a few easy steps. Build an inexpensive kit with supplies for your family's needs. Write down important information like phone numbers and medications. Always talk with your family and remember any pets in your planning. Be ready, be safe. Start your plan today at ready.gov/plan.
He went after Asian American voters. He went after African American voters and Hispanic voters, and it paid off on election night. He won over 50% of the Hispanic vote. He won over 55% of the Asian American vote, and he got over 25% of the African American vote. And so he took issues that people actually cared about, be it education, safety, taxes, cost of living, those type of issues that people wake up and go to bed dealing with every single day. And we were running against a candidate that just spent his whole time talking about national issues and former presidents and things, just talking past voters. And I think that was the key to the success. Campaign for every vote, making sure that no one was left behind and everyone had something to grab a hold of as part of our message.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're talking politics. We just talked about infrastructure, the economy, job numbers, blah, 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 blah. Right. So you saw coming back in the folks from the Youngkin campaign, Virginia. Youngkin defeated McAuliffe for governor of Virginia. Of course, people are trying to make a lot of it as if that's going to, be part of the national conversation going on. Maybe McAuliffe could have campaigned better. Again, I listened to Al Sharpton this morning, Val, and there were some callers from Virginia, and some of the callers tried to blame it on that there was not enough attention paid to Black voters. And one of the things that did not help out was the past governor, one of the past governors and current Senator Tim Kaine did not support a gambling bill that would have brought a casino to the Richmond area, which is where a lot of the Black folks live, and that there was not enough interest of Black voters in the Richmond area because people didn't get behind this casino project. I'm not sure about that. I mean, the casino projects passed in different parts of the state. I'm interested in what the representative for Youngkin said, which was a whole bunch of Hispanic folks and Asian folks voted for Youngkin. I talked to some folks from Ethiopia who now live in Virginia. They have one of the higher Ethiopian populations in the country. And a lot of those folks voted for Youngkin. The guy mentions that they got 25% of the Black vote. I'm not sure how much that means in sheer raw numbers, Val, but talk to me about the fact that Democrats could not or did not appeal to Asian, Hispanic, and however many of those Black voters and those Ethiopian voters who decided to vote for Youngkin. What does that mean for the Democrats?
Well, let's go back to McAuliffe first. He is known goods. There were a lot of people who didn't like McAuliffe when he was there the last time for what he did or didn't do for them or whatever. When you're in office for 6 years, you can make a lot of enemies and a lot of promises go unkept. So he had to fight through all of that. And African Americans are in many cases saying, don't take our vote for granted. Whoever you are, please don't do that. We're looking for things. We're looking at you in terms of what you're doing. So when I see a number like 25% of the African American voters voted for Youngkin, that is surprising to me when people are used to seeing less than 10% of the vote going to the GOP candidate. That is surprising to me. But on the other hand, I look at the Democratic candidate and wonder why you couldn't appeal to the African American voter. Maybe some things you were saying were lies, or maybe it didn't work as it had done before. But it's a very interesting thing to look at. I think it's one more nail that's going to be used in the coffin, if you will, that says, please don't take our vote for granted. You can't do that. And we'll see how that works out when we pull back the covers, Ed, and find out all of the detail about the Black and brown and Asian vote in that race and why a lot of them voted as they did. And Republicans should not take a victory lap just yet, simply because don't think that these Black and brown and Asian people are coming around to your message. Right. Because you got one problem, Mr. GOP. You are tethered to the white vote. That is your base. And you can't get away from that. If you go too far from that, they'll leave you and you have nothing. Yep. And the more you are tethered to that, the more difficult it's going to be to garner support from the Black and brown and Asian community. So you may have gotten away this time, but I wouldn't take a victory lap just yet.
Yeah, you know, the real numbers, Val, when you break them down, you know, McCullough had 48.5% to 50.7%, which is not a landslide by any means. One of the other things that was clear in this race is that McCullough won where he was supposed to, which is Richmond, Alexandria, Tyson's Corner, and then out in Eastern in Virginia, in the places that border North Carolina, up near Halifax County and places like that, Southampton County, Virginia, those kind of places, because those are heavy Democratic and Black folks who live there. He has trouble in a place like Norfolk, maybe because of the naval base and military retirees, that kind of thing. But if you look at the numbers, I wasn't that shocked by the closeness of it. I'm not even shocked about the fact that Youngkin won. What I don't want Democrats to do is to say that this is a bellwether for something, because you're right. You addressed the elephant in the room. McCullough had been governor before and had not left a good taste with everybody. And then on top of that, which is the next thing I want to talk about, is the plain nonsense that the Republicans are running with across the country, which is trying to rewrite history, Val, and try to say that they know more about history. And one thing they keep talking about is critical race theory. We talked about that with Irv Joyner last week as well. I want to play a small clip. I won't play a lot of it, but I looked at Fox News and CBN and a couple of right-wing outlets during the week, Val, and all of a sudden they want to talk about Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Let's take a look at this clip, and then we'll come back and talk about how it's related to some of these election results.
Despite their similarities, there were also deep differences. Most notably, how to approach the big issue of the day, slavery.
You write about how Lincoln wanted to abolish it, but thought that doing it too quickly would really hurt the country.
What happens is, there's no doubt about it, Lincoln evolved. He was not really exposed that much to slavery. Only 1% of all the slaves were in the North. The rest were in the South.
After the United States won its independence, the South built an economy dependent on slavery. Southerners felt an attack on that would destroy their economy and way of life. The North wanted freedom, although not necessarily equality. They saw slavery as morally wrong.
The minute Lincoln gets elected and 7 states leave before he can get to the White House, Frederick Douglass like, okay, Emancipation Proclamation, free the slaves, let us fight.
But President Lincoln wasn't ready to move that fast. He knew the North wasn't ready and risked losing half of his army by rushing the process.
And Frederick Douglass had a newspaper that he started, and he would write and he lambaste Lincoln. You let me down, going halfway. This is not what you promised. And as inaugural, in an effort to get us reunified, he said, keep your slaves, we'll work it out. Just come back. And they.
Okay, Val. So now the right wing is all of a sudden some expert on the Civil War, and they want to talk about this relationship between Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and how they came together to save the country or whatever, yada yada yada. And the reason why it's related to McCullough and Youngkin and some of these other races and all the way down to school board across the country is because they're trying to tell you that they know more about what was on Lincoln's mind because he was a Republican and they're Republicans too. Can you break down the real history behind Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and why we're still having problems now because people don't understand what really went down with that relationship?
Well, Frederick Douglass actually wanted Abraham Lincoln to go much further than he did with things like the Emancipation Proclamation and how he was dealing with Black troops and being in the military and just so many other things. Abraham Lincoln didn't do it. Let me just take one example, is the Emancipation Proclamation itself. Frederick Douglass wanted so much that Lincoln wasn't even going to consider. What Lincoln wanted to do was issue the Emancipation Proclamation on September the 17th of 1862. That was right after the Battle of Antietam, because he had won. And it ended up that he was convinced to, okay, let's talk about it, but let's not make it effective until January to give people a chance to do some things. Because what he really wanted, Ed, he wanted people in the South and the Confederacy to become fearful that if they don't come back to the Union, then your slaves are going to be released. They are going to cause trouble for you. You are going to have to build your own breastworks and cook your own food in the military. And you may have to send some people, some of your troops back home to do the work that these people used to do, or to keep them from running away in the first place. So it's going to be a tremendous burden on your military if we pass this Emancipation Proclamation. The wording of it was critical. It said all of those states who are in rebellion against the United States of America, effective 1 January of 1863, their slaves are hereby emancipated. Now, that affected states like Louisiana, like Maryland, Pennsylvania. It affected all states. Louisiana was not affected in terms of its slave being released because it was no longer in rebellion as of January 1st. Maryland was not affected because it was a border state and it was never in rebellion. And Pennsylvania wasn't affected simply because it was never a border state and it was never in rebellion. It was a union state. So all slaves were not released at this time. That's one of the things that Frederick Douglass said, this is not right. Let's change the wording. Let's do something different here. But Lincoln's Attorney General knew exactly what it was, and he spoke of it in a meeting that is exemplified in the movie Lincoln, when he said, this whole piece was a military exigent. It was not a 13th Amendment, because they were working on that at the same time. So it was a military exigent. So Frederick Douglass knew this, and he ended up, that's what pushed Frederick Douglass to say, let me tell you what this is about. I want to send my sons to fight now. And he sent them to fight and do some things because he didn't think that what Lincoln was doing was enough. And now GOP folks are trying to say, that Lincoln and Douglas were on the same page and they did all of these great things because they were Republicans. That's just not true.
Oh, I'll tell you what it is. It's bullshit. And what's going to happen is that again, because we want to try to deal with history, they're trying to lump uh, critical race theory, which they don't understand at all. And again, we tried to explain that last week, and we'll have some more conversations about that and try to lump that all together. And it played a tremendous role in getting people out in places like Dulles, Virginia, and out in Loudoun County, which is just west of Alexandria and those kind of places. The turnout there was probably much more than you would think because they've been told that their children are being told that white people are all evil and so on and so forth. What they've done, Val, is they've doubled down on telling history the wrong way, or not. Well, not wanting to say the wrong way, it's telling a lie, right? And now you're going to see all these right wing folks have books about Lincoln and Douglas, and they may even try to drag Martin Luther King into this. We played a clip last week where your boy Ben Carson was trying to say that King was only worried about the content of people's character. No, I do believe I did hear King say he wanted his money that we were due, and he was expecting that payment. That the U.S. was bankrupt and overdue with black people. That's what I heard King say, and that's why
I heard King, excuse me for cutting you off, say that told white people, do what you put on paper.
Do what you put on paper.
Do what you put on paper. They don't talk about that a lot.
No, and they won't. So that's why we're in the predicament we're in, Val. So there's a ton of other things we need to talk about. But I think the thing we probably should do, let's take a break. And then when we come back, I want to pick up on a thread throughout this conversation, which is people telling lies about how America really is, which is going to lead to a problem right here in North Carolina where we are, Val. We've talked about this a number of times over the last couple of months, redistricting. So stay right there. When we come back, we're going to talk about redistricting and a whole bunch more. You're watching The Deal.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jacqueline Walters. I've been a practicing OBGYN for 23 years. When my patients ask me whether they should get vaccinated against COVID-19, I tell them yes. If you're trying to become pregnant now or plan to try in the future, you can get a COVID-19 vaccine. There's no evidence that any vaccine, including COVID-19 vaccine, causes fertility problems. I send my patients to the CDC website to get reliable information at www.cdc.gov.
This one's for the real ballers and shot callers, the sisterhood of women in tech. They're discovering cures, building apps, and programming the blockchain. They're CEOs, worldwide hustlers who can make it rain. They're tearing down the old boys club and seeing big gains. Because when women in tech come together, you know they make that change.
The Biden presidency ended last night for little little Jamie Raskin and Benny Thompson. Here's a quote for your committee. We killed it in the crib, okay? Yes. Less than 1 year.
One of the worst states in America when it comes to voter suppression and gerrymandering is North Carolina. Now, folks have been fighting that state. Republicans have been doing some of the most evil things. A federal court once ruled that there was laser-like precision of Republicans targeting black voters, where they struck down the racial gerrymandering. Well, now you have a new group of districts that have been approved, and North Carolina Republicans have truly lost their minds. We're talking about a state that's pretty much 50-50 Democrat and Republican, okay? Well, they have passed new congressional maps that would give Republicans for the next decade an almost 78% advantage in terms of they will control 78% of the.
And welcome back to our final segment of the deal. It's Sunday, November 7th, 2021. We're normally here on Saturday, but had to tend to some business yesterday, so we're here today. It's a bunch to talk about. We talked about infrastructure, job numbers, the election in Virginia, who voted for who, blah, blah, blah. And we even gave our obligatory history lesson like we try to do every show, because I don't think you can talk about any of this stuff without having context. So we talked about Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And coming in from the break, Val, you saw Roland Martin say that North Carolina may be one of the worst states in terms of how the Republicans have been able to gerrymander districts. We know that over the past 2 decades, I remember when I used to cover the North Carolina legislature, and I would be down at the legislature trying to interview some of these clowns on the Republican side, and how they were unabashed about how they were planning on taking over by gerrymandering. I mean, I sat in any number of the speakers and leaders on the Republican side, and they did not pull any punches. That they were trying to build the kind of districts where they would have long-term entrenched power, and they managed to do it, Val. So this latest round, after the census, these folks are in a room in Raleigh at the legislature, and then these maps have been coming up, and it looks like, and Roland Martin says 78% of the representation will most assuredly be Republican in the U.S. House. Republicans only make up 30-some%. He misspoke a little bit. He said North Carolina was about half and half. It is not half and half. Democrats vastly outnumber Republicans in terms of registrations. Republicans make up about 30-some%, but they have 78% of the control, Val. What the hell is that? Talk to me. How the hell do you get 33 to 78? How does that happen?
It's called gerrymandering. It's called what happens when you are allowed by law to choose your own voters. Let that sink in, folks, just a little bit. Instead of voters choosing their representatives the way a democracy is supposed to work, under gerrymandering, lawmakers, politicians, representatives get to choose who their voters are. That is as far from democracy as you could get. You're going to choose your own voters, and then you're going to tell people you have a democracy. Yeah, I'm going to have 3 people voting, and they're going to all be members of my family. And then you can have everybody else to vote as long as your numbers don't exceed 2. And let's see who's going to win. It is impossible to even fathom what Roland was saying in his first piece, which I agree with his first piece, when he said North Carolina is one of the worst places in the world when it comes to upholding democracy and those kinds of things. Because what has happened, Ed, is that North Carolina Republicans discovered that in this thing called democracy, they could not win. The numbers were going in the wrong direction. They could not win. More people of color were registering and moving into the state. People were winning elections. They knew they couldn't win. So they had to change the bet on the first tee. That's an old golf metaphor, and everybody knows bets are won and lost on the first tee. When you say how many strokes you're giving me on which holes and how does it count, that's where the match is won or lost. You're just going out there now validating your victory. And that's what's happening with gerrymandering. In gerrymandering, representatives get to choose their voters, and then we go through a process called democracy to declare the winner. It's a sham. It's a farce.
Well, I can tell you this. I don't think most folks believe in democracy in America. I don't think they ever have. If you just look at how we got to where we are in the 240 some years, we started out by not counting everybody or not letting everybody vote. Then we went through a period where, not only were they enslaved, We had cases in the Supreme Court that said we weren't even people. Then we get to Reconstruction after the war, and then we had massacres like in Wilmington, where we overthrew duly elected governments, where Negroes were running those, and then we went through a period where no Negro served in the House or the Senate for years on a national level.
29 years.
And then we get to where we are now, which is the only way they can maintain control is to gerrymander their way to districts that are going to look crazy, probably cut through communities, cut through universities like they did with A&T the last time, right down the middle of campus. So people didn't know where to vote or how to vote or who they could vote for. It's the nonsense, Val, and that's why history is so important when you look at these, and that's why when these angry white folks get mad because we try to talk to their children and say, look, you know, your buddy over here, your neighbor, the reason why there are no black folks in your neighborhood is because we've been redlined out, and it's a historical reason for that. You cannot pass a bill even in 2021 to make it safe for black folks to drive down the road without people getting mad. You can choke black people out if you want to. You can stand on black folks' necks, and we can't even get legislation passed for that. So there's a historical context to all of this, Val. I am very concerned about the North Carolina districts because the governor can't veto them, right? Roy Cooper, his hands are tied. Those districts are going to go in. It's going to take sheer will of people to try to overturn some of these by driving out people to vote. But I'm not sure how much leeway you're going to have when you got them so unbalanced that Republicans are sure to come out with a lot of damn seats, maybe 11 out of this.
And what makes it even worse, Ed, is that in the case of Chiavallo versus Washington, where the Supreme Court heard this case about gerrymandering, they came out and said, well, as long as it ain't about race, then you can gerrymander all you want to. And one of the other arguments that came up was, well, what's our remedy? How can we get out from under this gerrymandering? And the court said, well, I think you should go to the polls and outvote them. When you allow representatives to pick their own voters, how in the hell are you going to go to the polls and outvote them? So, I mean, this is a lock. Unless we have some major changes from another source, another way, this gerrymandering thing is here to stay, Ed. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
And they got all of the power. As a matter of fact, if they want to, they could change it so that it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to elect a chief executive in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Change the governor's races to a kind of thing that suits Republicans. So now it's already set up that the House and the Senate is done. The House is done in a way that it suits Republicans. Then they could institute some laws that is the Senate is safe and the executive branch is safe. The courts are already safe. We had a grand sweep in the courts here the last time. Just everybody running for Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals in the state of North Carolina, if you were a Democrat, you lost.
Yeah.
All of them, everybody.
Val, it's crazy. In North Carolina, it's supposed to be a progressive state. You know, companies want to move here because all these supposed smart, educated, well-rounded people live here like me. But I got some crazy ass neighbors who think that their child is being told that all white people are bad. Well, let's move on, Val. So we're going to have to figure that out, right? I got another story though I want to talk to you about that's concerning me. There are two trials going on that have high importance. One down in Georgia and the other up in Wisconsin. The McMichael Bryan trial. They murdered Ahmaud Arbery. So I want to correct that before we even talk about it, because I've seen it written as the Ahmaud Arbery trial. Well, he ain't on trial. He's dead because the McMichaels family and Mr. Bryan murdered him. That's what we're talking about here. And then the Rittenhouse trial, where some crazy kid went berserk and started shooting people. Let's look at a clip and we'll talk about it in just a second.
Now, this case is racially charged in several ways. And now the makeup of the jury itself is charged too, because defense attorneys use legal loopholes to cut out potential black jurors. It's now a nearly all-white jury that will assess the actions of these white killers, 11 white people and 1 black man. Now that is so extreme, don't take my word for it. Listen to the trial judge who felt the need to openly condemn the discrimination found by the court.
The court has found that there appears to be intentional discrimination in the panel. Quite a few African-American jurors were excused through preemptory strikes exercised by the defense. But that doesn't mean that the court has the authority to reseat.
Val, so the judge in the trial of the McMichaels and Mr. Bryan said that the jury was already bogus, that they struck these black jurors about in voir dire saying that we don't want these niggas. Basically, we want to have as close as we can come to an all-white jury that we can legally get away with. And the judge said, that's what you did. So talk to me, Val. Why are we in 2021 and looks like we're in To Kill a Mockingbird? You know, I mean, that you can choose all white jury or nearly all white jury in 2021.
Well, the defense knew, Ed, that all they needed was 1, and the odds are tremendously in their favor if they got 11. And all they need now is just one of those 11 to say not guilty, and everybody walks on this thing. But where we are as a nation when it comes to stuff like this is we're in a bad, bad way, because the rules that govern us, is particularly in our justice system, criminal justice system, is based on good, decent people making good, honest decisions. It's not based on a lot of people seeing how they can game the system, because once you start gaming the system, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And I don't care how much you try to change it around the edges, around the margins. If you got people constantly gaming the system through gerrymandering, through voir dire, through whatever it is, the system ain't going to work. And it may have to all come down, Ed, before we can build it back better, as Joe Biden likes to talk about it, because this one we got right now ain't working.
No, it is not working, Val. And then on top of that, like I said, the trial of young Mr. Rittenhouse, who bought a gun to protest, didn't even live in the community, for one, lived in another state, for two, was underage and should not have had the power of gun that he had, for three. I can keep going down the list of all the problems with this. And then he's able to kill folks, and then the right wing
give him water.
Yeah.
And not have his gun taken away from him.
Not have his gun taken away from him. And then on top of that, you can turn on Fox News. They were raising money for his defense on national programs on Fox News. I watch Fox News from time to time, Val, so you don't have to, the rest of you out there. I do this for you. So if any of you guys want to send me hazard duty pay or whatever for having to look at that nonsense, I'm willing to take it. Before we run out of time, Val, we need to talk about COVID, because, you know, a few weeks ago, we were all on Kyrie Irving, and rightfully so. Homeboy lost his mind and should be vaccinated. You know, you've had 3 shots. I've had 3 shots. I am not dead. I have not turned into a monster. I don't have any magnetic stuff coursing through my veins or whatever. Whatever the reason these people are saying they don't want to get vaccinated. But this dude, hold on a second. Let's look at this and we'll talk about it.
Are you vaccinated, and what's your stance on vaccinations? Yeah, I've been immunized.
To know, since you're not vaccinated, why in the hell would you judge them? The whole context and the comments made it clear that he was saying, I'm vaccinated. So if he tries to thread that needle, that's going to get even more scorn and derision thrown his way.
So, Val, that is Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the famous Green Bay Packers, a former MVP, Super Bowl champion, blah, blah, blah. But he's a liar. He basically said that he was inoculated. He went to some voodoo doctor, had some herbs, I don't know, but he lied. Now he has COVID. God bless him. I hope he recovers, right? But he put people in peril in his locker room. And I imagine there's other players in the NFL, NBA, NHL who aren't vaccinated. I think they're stupid. That's me. I got vaccinated. Talk to me about Mr. Aaron Rodgers, because we talked smack about Kyrie Irving. So I think we need to give equal time and smack down Mr. Rodgers.
The first thing out of his mouth, Ed, was, I am immunized. And he tried to play on words here. He wanted people to think that he could use the word immunized and have people to think that he was vaccinated. To me, that's duplicitous. And, I got to put everything behind that. That means I can't trust you. You got an integrity problem with me. The next thing is, as you say, all of the stuff he did to his teammates. The people that go through all kinds of changes and put their body on the line for him so he can experience fame and glory and money. And then he lies to them and put their lives and their families at risk. I had problems with Aaron Rodgers when he reacted as he did to the general manager's decision to draft another quarterback as their first draft choice. And Aaron Rodgers hit the ceiling, like, I dare you draft somebody in my position as your first choice. I don't like that. So I may decide not to play. So he held out forever. I don't know, nobody else knows what the background behind the door decision was and how much the Green Bay Packers had to give in to get him to come back and play. I didn't like that. They didn't say anything about it too much. He's back playing. And now to find out he's got an integrity problem on top of that, I'm throwing all my chips away. I can't deal with him no more.
Yeah, well, you know what? Colin Kaepernick gets drummed out of the league, has not had another opportunity to play. He's better than 99% of the quarterbacks that play in the league. You mean to tell me that Sam Darnold at Carolina is better than Colin Kaepernick? You're telling a lie. I know that for sure. And then you got people like Aaron Rodgers, and then other white quarterbacks around the league. Kirk Cousins has talked against vaccination. There's other white quarterbacks around the league who talked against Colin Kaepernick and just kneeling and showing protest in general. A lot of these guys have not only integrity problems, but they have inflated egos of themselves. They play football. Now, I was an athlete. You were an athlete, Val. We've dealt with athletes our whole life. You're playing a sport. Yes, you make a lot of money, and it's outsized amount of money that you make for what you do compared to what other people do in society. Nevertheless, the marketplace pays for it. People watch Aaron Rodgers throw a football to Negroes running down a cow pasture. That's just a fact. And so my piece on the deal this week, if you want to go take a look at it, is just about that. And it's about Colin Kaepernick and how he has not gotten his just rewards. But if you watch Netflix, go watch Colin Kaepernick in black and white. It is very moving. It's about his early years. And it deals with also what he thinks about how the NFL combine is like slavery. Now, I've heard a lot of white backlash on it saying, well, these guys make a ton of, a few guys make a ton of money. And the risk that you put to your body is not commensurate with the amount of money you make ever. And still, the bottom line is the sport. So Aaron Rodgers, I'm done with you. I'm glad you did not get the job on Jeopardy. That's the other thing. He was a good host, though, but I'm glad he didn't get the job. The last thing about COVID, Val, is the COVID pill. Let's take a look at that clip, and we'll talk about it real quick.
Vaccine maker Pfizer announcing early trial results of its antiviral pill show it cut the risk of hospitalization or death by 89%.
It's really exciting to know that there might be an option to provide to patients that could help save their life.
The drug, called Paxlovid, was given to high-risk patients within 3 days of developing COVID symptoms. It comes just a month after Merck reported its new antiviral drug cut the risk of hospitalization or death in half.
While the news around these pills is incredibly exciting, this does not in any way replace the need for vaccination. The vaccines still represent our safest and most effective way to reduce risk from COVID.
So, Val, there's one more thing in the arsenal. Now there's a pill that you can take that will help you if you already got COVID. My thing is, don't get COVID. And how did we not get COVID? Don't spread it. How do you not spread it? Get more people vaccinated. We're fully 18 months, 19, 20 months into this thing, and we're still asking people to get their first vaccination. Aaron Rodgers proves that there are some assholes in the society that don't think about other people, and I'm glad that the pill is an option, Val, but you got to get vaccinated, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. All right, so as we always do, I got to ask you, Val, what do we got to look forward to in the coming week?
Well, there's a lot of things coming up on Connections coming up next Sunday. We'll have a representative from the Democratic Coalition Caucus, Miss Deborah Ross. Representative Deborah Ross will be on the show, and we'll have an opportunity to let her talk to us about the Coalition Caucus and what it means and the representation. I also want to talk to her about the delegation, the Democratic delegation losing its senior member and what that means. David Price has decided not to run for re-election. So we've got a lot of things coming out of that interview. So I invite people to join in and listen to Connections next time at 8 a.m. on Foxy 107, 104, WFXC, WFXK, or go online and pull up Radio 1, find Foxy 107, 104, and listen live.
Yeah, listen live next Sunday. Deborah Ross, U.S. Representative for the state of North Carolina. On Monday, we'll make some of that video available. We got to, after it's live on Sunday, we'll make some of that video available because I think it's important to hear from representatives. One of the things, Val, we need to get G.K. Butterfield back on, and Alma Adams. We haven't had her on yet, but we need to reach out to them as well, because I'm very interested to find out what they think about the infrastructure bill and how the Democrats are going to fare in the midterm. So folks, we'll work on that. Obviously, we have guests from time to time. I know you get sick of hearing me and Val right off at our mouths, but, we try the best that we can to actually tell you the truth. That's the difference here, and also put it into historical context. Well, you know what? You squandered an hour, but we're glad you did. And we want to make sure that you come in and listen to Connections with Val Atkinson, Herb Joyner, and me on next Sunday at 8 a.m. You don't have any excuse that we're in daylight saving time, so you should be refreshed up at 8 a.m. on Foxy 107, 104 on the radio, on terrestrial radio, and like Val said, on the internet from anywhere in the world. And then join us back here next Saturday, where we'll have a discussion of all the news from the week. So in the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody this week, and we'll see you next Saturday. Bye.
We're cold, we're cold, we're cold, we're cold, we're cold.
authorize funds for the federal aid highways, highway safety programs, and transit programs, and for other purposes. Senate amendment. Mr. DeFazio moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 3684.